Good afternoon, everyone. Myself Nitish Chugh. I, on behalf of Emerging Businesses Chamber of Commerce, welcome you all for this interactive webinar. The topic for the day is Ind AS 113 Fair Value Measurement, and we have with us a learner speaker on the same topic. He is an insolvency professional, Mr. Karun Nagpal, and as well as a registered valuer, and he has plenty of exposure in this fair value measurement in HSBC Bank. And before we move on to the technical session, we have with us our secretary for the Delhi chapter, Aniket Srivastav ji. He is also the founder member of EBCC. And our mentor is also with us, Mr. Rakesh Singh ji. He is the past president of ICMI as well as the technical advisor to CAPA right now. We are blessed to have him with us, and it's only because of its zeal that we have been able to conduct so many webinars. It's our 15th webinar today. We thank Rakesh ji for his efforts. And before we start, I would like to ask Rakesh ji to please share his words of wisdom with all of us. Rakesh ji.
Yeah, thank you everyone. And today's topic, I think it is one of the most important topics, and which the whole world will be looking for, because the valuation is one thing, and that too with a fair valuation. That is mind-boggling. I don't think that anybody would be. It's one of the tricks where the whole world is now going to shift. And because what will be the fair valuation across nations, across continents, across businesses, I think everyone will be finding a new norm. And in that scenario, fair value valuations or fair price valuations is basically referring to something existing or something related in the market or nearby area. But the whole globe is going through a very big turmoil. And I think the speakers today, they have got a great challenge to also throw that what would be the principles post-COVID. I think that is going to be a wonderful experience for everyone. I hope that I also try to understand, because I'm also searching that what would be our value in the market tomorrow. It's for every individual, it's for every business. So this topic itself is a very challenging one. And I know the learned speakers, and they are quite competent people. And hope it will be very, very interesting for each one of us. And let's see whatever the questions, and I'll definitely like to be part of this. And possibly I will also like to have a couple of questions at the end. So thank you everyone for participating. I think this is a wonderful program, and this is a wonderful topic. It's a very good choice of topic, and really, I'm really privileged to be part of this deliberation. Thank you. Let's hear to the, I think, the learned speakers. I think it's a real challenge for them also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words. It is my humble request to all the participants, though the Mr. Karun Nagpal, he is a very good speaker, but what our aim is to keep this webinar very, very interactive. I can see a number of valuers, registered valuers, they have joined in the participants list. So whenever they feel they want to add some value to the context, they can unmute themselves, and they can, enlighten everyone on the basis of their knowledge. So over to you, Karunji. Hello.
Thank you, Nitiji. Is it audible?
Yeah, your voice is audible, but आपकी screen नहीं आ रही, photo नहीं आ रही आपकी.
क्या हुआ? Disconnect हो गया.
Nitiji, audible? Is it audible?
Yeah, it is audible.
Yes.
Yeah, you can be visible on
I
screen.
could not. There was some issue with the network. I could not hear Rakesh ji. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Rakesh ji, and also Nitish ji, Aniket ji, for providing me opportunity to speak in this forum. I was fortunate enough, so I got the opportunity to start the fair valuation much before it came into India, and I was doing this since 2011. And without wasting much time, I think we should go because the topic is very big and I doubt I may be able to complete that in 1 hour. So I'm quickly sharing my screen with you. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, Karan, it is
So
visible.
is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Nitish ji, can you see
Yeah,
my screen?
yeah, it's visible now.
Great. So fair value measurement is governed by FAS 157, ASC 820, and then ASU 2011-04 in US. Why these are there are number of updates in fair value measurement in US because it developed in US over the time. It started sometime before this subprime crisis, and eventually a number of update came in and it got developed. In IFRS, they have very well drafted accounting standards. So Indian 113 is the convergence of IS, so that is similar to IFRS 13. However, there are not much differences in US and IFRS. There are a couple of differences only. So I'll talk about that during my slide also. So let us, so this Ind AS 113 is applicable for all, right now for all listed company and on companies with 250 crore of net worth. And Sumoto also company can adopt the Ind AS and they can apply this 113 standard. So talking about my presentation, I have divided my presentation into two parts. First one is about valuation, its valuation concept, how it is emerging in India, valuation standard and all. I'll not spend much time on this. I'll spend around 10-15 minutes on introduction, and then rest of the session will be on fair value measurement. So I will include fair value hierarchy, definitions under fair value measurements, approaches and disclosure. And lastly, I'll discuss the COVID impact on fair value measurements. There are a number of challenges in fair value reporting, right? So I would start with the famous quote from Warren Buffett: price is what you pay and value is what you get. And another economist from Australia said, value is nothing inherent and good, no property of them, nor an independent thing existing by itself. So clearly by this definition, we can analyze that there is a difference between value and price, right? Value may or may not be same as the price. In the perfect market competition, value will be same as price, but that is theoretical. So here the price and value I have compared. Price indicate the amount at which particular asset is bought and sold in the open market, whereas value indicate the worth of asset in normal circumstances. Normal is the perfect circumstances which do not exist practicality. Market usually discover the price which reflect the worth of an asset. Value of property does not always correspond to the price. It discovers different prices for same asset in different context. So I used to give an example of rainy season and umbrella, but nowadays during COVID you can easily relate the situation. Medical supplies have the prices for supplies have gone up, crude prices have come down. So it is a context specific. Price is not absolute. It is context specific. Hotels fare have gone down. All these. Very good, very nicely drafted definition of valuation from International Valuation Standard Council. It says valuation is the process of determining the economic worth of an asset or a company under certain assumption and limiting conditions and subject to data available on valuation date. So we will talk about the assumption, conditions. It is a date specific. We will talk about everything in this definition during my presentation. Let's move on to the next slide. Valuation in India. So currently in India, each statute is acting as a separate island. Right now, we do not have any body which is governing the valuation. Unlike US have the appraiser association. It is largely a self-regulation in a self-regulation mode, except for 3,000 registered valuer that were registered with IBBI under the company's registered value rules. valuation in India is at the initial phase of development and is evolving. So government is planning to have the institutional framework to bring in the National Institute of Valuer. So draft has already been there. So it will be soon approved, and there will be, like similar to CA, there will be separate body which will be governing the valuers. And as per the draft, it says approximately 2 lakh plus valuers are required in India. And right now we have only 3,000 plus, and that too these 3,000 plus valuers can do valuation only under the Companies Act and IBC. So I'll talk about the valuation requirement where we can act as a valuer. We have discussed the institutional framework. So several countries, including India, have prescribed their own standard. However, there is trend towards the international valuation standard. There is an International Valuation Standard Council. India is a member of that. And in case India have the authority, valuation authority, so it will become member. So maybe in times to come, we may have the structure similar to what we have for IFRS and Ind AS. So they may be issuing, and we would be having the convergence in India. ICAI have issued some valuation standards. So these are 8 numbers, 101 definitions, 102 talk about the valuation premise, the basis of valuation. 103 talk about valuation approaches and scope, work, analysis and evaluation. 202 talks about report and documentation. So 201 and 202 relates to a valuer while he is preparing the report and issuing the report. And 301 to 303 is specific for relating to business valuation, intangibles and financial instruments. So these are based upon the international financial these valuation standards. ICAI have come up. They have the board and they have come up, but these standards are only applicable for CAs. The IBBI have divided the valuation into 3 categories for plant and machinery, land and building, and securities and financial assets. Within security and financial assets, there are CAs and merchant bankers who are also allowed to value. So there is no standard framework, right? They are trying to classify all these categories under one roof. So valuation, let's put valuation requirement. So valuation may be required for regulatory purposes, for business restructuring, financial reporting, and there may be other miscellaneous purpose. This is not an exhaustive list. I have tried to compile as much as I can. There may be other circumstances as well where valuation may be required. So under regulatory, it may be for RBI, FEMA, Income Tax Act, under Rule 11U, SEBI, Companies Act, insolvency. So currently under Companies Act and insolvency and bankruptcy, only registered valuers are allowed. So at times to come, the valuers who is registered with the National Institute of Valuers can only do the valuation, whether it is for plant and machinery, land and building, or financial instruments. Under business restructuring, there may be sale, purchase of business, merger, demerger, fundraising, financial reporting. They purchase price allocation, portfolio value valuation, fair value reporting, impairment testing, ESOP valuation. For impairment testing, ESOP valuation, there are separate standards. There may be litigation, family settlement. So in this slide, I'll be covering only the fair value measurement, right? That is under finance fair value reporting. There are separate standards for other, suppose such as business combination, ESOP valuation. So I'll not be talking about that. Then comes the valuation premise. So this is the valuation basis. While you are doing the valuation, you should have some underlying assumption, whether you are valuing the entity or asset as a going concern, or under a forced transaction, or under liquidation. Highest as the best use is, for example, for in case of building. So you have you are not using a building. You have a building in your books. You are not using. It may fetch more revenue in case you let out the building. So it can be easily let out. So even if the building is in your while assessing the fair value, you have to take into consideration the economic benefits you can draw from bidding. That is the highest and the best use. Going concern, you all already understand. It is the assumption that company will go for long future, and under this assumption, going concern assumption, so we discount the future economic benefits that a company can draw. Current and existing use as is where is basis. You might have seen the advertisement in newspaper as is. Orderly liquidation. So in case of liquidation, every market participant is allowed to bid. Post transaction, where some covenants are attached to transaction or some regulatory requirement is there, so that will be. I have summed up the discussion premise very presentation in. If I divide the addition premise into going concern and under going concern, it may be value in use, that will be for fair value under financial reporting, fair value measurement that we will discuss. Fair value to a specific holder. So there may be instances one might foresee that I may be able to fetch more money out of this asset. So like different market participants will value the asset differently. So some might be able to fetch more out of a particular asset. So that is participant specific. Value in exchange, when we have deal with other companies in case of merger or acquisition. So we compute the swap ratio. It is also again required for fair value report. Liquidation, it may be forced or orderly. Orderly when it is going to bid, value in exchange, that is fair value. To again to a specific holder, maybe some covenants attached to it or some restriction, or maybe for any legal purpose. Forced, some company have a restricted stock, so that will be considered while valuing that as. Then comes the valuation adjustments. So these are the adjustments. Some of the adjustments are actually endless. So you can adjust the value based upon any adjustment you can think of. Commonly used are DLOM and DLOC. This is discount for lack of marketability, because some might be holding 2% in the company, some might be 25%, 25% may not be able to sell that easily. So that there has to be discount for lack of marketability. For lack of control, again, I am 5%, someone is holding 50%, he has a substantial control. So his valuation might be different. I may have to adjust for lack of control. These are the commonly used. Apart from that, tax concession, ESOP valuation. So there are restrictions attached to ESOP. Auditor qualification, if I am doing suppose equity method investment, I am valuing. So financial statements come up with annual report, come up with some auditor's qualification or some findings which may have impact. So I will adjust my fair value. COVID impact, I'll discuss about that in detail later. Now, let us start with the fair value measurement Ind AS 113. So Ind AS 113 fair value measurement is the convergence with the IFRS 13. So this standard defines the fair value, establish a framework for measuring the fair value, and disclosure requirements about the value measurements. This standard do not have the overriding other standard. So this standard do not prescribe which assets to be, it says assets and liabilities to be valued at, to be fair valued, and it's established the framework and disclosure. So wherever any other standard talks about fair value, so we may have to come to this standard to ascertain how to compute the fair value and what are the disclosures required. Ind AS defines fair value as the price that would be received to sell an asset or transfer a liability. So it is based upon the exit price notion. Suppose in market we have a buy and sell price. So while fair valuing, we will take exit price, not entry price. When we can take the entry price, I'll let you know. In an orderly transaction is not the transaction is not forced one, and it is open one. It is happen normal business conditions between the market participants. I'll talk about market participant at a measurement date. Again, this is a date specific valuation. As on the reporting date, we have to ascertain the value. Fair value market based measurement is not end specific. It is market based. We have to, I'll talk about the observable and unobservable inputs. So you will understand this sentence. Measured using the assumption that market participant would use when pricing the asset or including the risk assumption. So suppose I have investment in company X. Someone also has investment in companies X. So now we both value that investment independently. So we should value such a that our valuation, both of our valuation should be close, right? And we should use the market observable inputs so that anyone outside the market can identify the value of that, arrive at the value of that particular asset or liability. Entity intention to hold an asset or settle or otherwise fulfill a liability is not at all relevant while measuring the fair value. Suppose I have AFS and HTM security. In case of HTM, I have intention to hold that security to maturity, and during in between, the market price of that HTM security fell down. Even though I have intention to carry that security till maturity, I will have to my fair value will be basis the market price, not my intention, right? So in case I am holding a security for one company and some of the security I have classified AFS and others are HTM, the valuation for both the security will be same in case the market observable inputs are there. So in case of listed securities, valuation for both HTM and AFS will be same, even though I will carry the AFS at MTM and HTM at amortized cost. So these are some exclusions where we have specific standards. So in case of lease, it talks about specific lease, minimum lease payment. So I'll not go into that. Inventories, impairment, Ind AS 36 is there. So how to compute the recoverable amount. So that is a separate standard. Orderly transaction is usual and customary, is not a forced one, not be under forced or distress sale. When transaction is not orderly, inadequate exposure to market, asset or liability to a single participant, only one participant, only one deal is there. Seller is in insolvency or bankruptcy, so that will not be an orderly one. Transaction is an outlier. Suppose market is trading at 100 and I say my investment is 200, so not be the case. Measuring fair value. So when measuring the fair value, entities should take into account the characteristic, the condition and location of the asset and the restriction attached to it. Is there any regulatory restriction on my asset? So I have to take into consideration all that. Fair value measurement assume the transaction take place in the principal market, or in the absence of principal market, the most advantageous market. What is principal market? Let us discuss that with example. The market with the greatest volume and level of activity is the principal market. Suppose I have BSE and NSE and my stock is getting traded in BSE only, and NSE shows very less volume. So BSE will become my primary market, that is principal market. So stock X price is 20 in market A, in market B 22. Average trade per day in market A is higher. So market A, however, the price is lower in market A will become the principal market. In case the trade is more or less same in market A and B, then I will have to go to the most advantageous market that maximizes the amount and minimizes the amount for liabilities. So I would have to take into account the transaction cost and the quotation cost also while analyzing the market. In my example, market A and B, price is 31 and 30. In this case, I have to adjust my market price with the transportation cost, transaction cost to arrive at the net price to identify the most advantageous market. So net price after adjusting the transportation cost and transaction cost comes out to 23 in market A and 24 in market B, which is most advantageous. So market B in this case will be the most advantageous market. Measuring fair value. So the entity shall measure the fair value using the assumption that market participant would use when pricing the asset, or we will talk about that. Participant act on their best economic interest, so highest and the best use conception. Price in the principal market or the most advantageous market used to measure the value of asset shall not be adjusted for transaction cost. So talked about, we identified market. Now while fair value in coming to arriving at the fair value, we should not take into account the transaction cost. So we should only adjust the transportation cost. Why? Because if you have an asset, you want to sell a car and your car is lying somewhere in a remote area and you have to bring your car to the market, that is transportation cost. So you have to take into while arriving at the fair value. Transportation cost, because fair value is hypothetical. We are not going to sell my asset. We are just doing the fair value of my asset. So in this case, we just have to adjust the transportation cost. So in my case, price is 31 and 30, and we after adjusting the transportation cost, so market B most advantageous market and fair value 25 here will be treated as the fair value, not 26, right? 30 minus 5. Let's move on. Fair value at the time of initial recognition. So at the time of initial recognition, fair value is the transaction price, that is the entry price. So even in case of exchange, so the price paid will be the entry price and that will become the fair value. So transaction price in some circumstances might not represent fair value if it is a transaction between related party, if it is a duress or forced sale, if the unit transaction price of a particular unit is different. Suppose in case of business combination, I am acquiring an entire business, so I may not be able to identify the asset because goodwill is there. I would have to allocate the goodwill. So in this case, it will be difficult to arrive at the fair value considering the transaction price. Market in which transaction take place is different from the principal. So if the transaction is happening outside the principal or most advantageous market, you should not take the transaction price as the fair value. Highest and the best use, so that is applicable for non-financial assets. Its ability to generate economic benefits. So we have already discussed that highest and the best use. Highest and the best use for non-financial asset take into account the physically, whether that is physically possible, permissible, and financially feasible. Physically possible means whether we can build, we have a piece of land, whether we are able to build, or whether it is under a legal litigation, so legally not permissible. Financially feasible, my building is in a shabby state. I may not be able to let it out. I will have to invest on that more than the value of the building. So it may not be financially feasible. So in case of recurring, non-recurring, I'll talk about that. If the highest and the best use of non-financial asset differ from the current use, suppose I have a building, I have not let out that building, I have kept that building idle. In my disclosure, I have to state what is the reason why I am using the building, that I have intention to use that building in near future or not. So that I have to specify in my report, annual report. Now coming to fair value hierarchy. So Ind AS gives the fair value hierarchy into 3 levels, level 1, 2, and 3. It gives the highest priority observable inputs, level 1, Level 2 again are observable inputs, but some adjustments are made on level 2, and lowest priority to unobservable inputs. So let us first understand what are observable and unobservable inputs. Observable inputs that are developed using the market data. Observable, anyone, any market participant can relate, can understand that inputs, such as publicly available information like the share price, that is observable. Yield curve, right, that are observable because that anyone can see and relate that. Unobservable inputs are data which we have used, wherein we have used our own internal models and assumption to arrive at the fair value. This standard says we should minimize the use of unobservable input to the extent possible and maximize the use of observable inputs. So this is fair value hierarchy, level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is input used to measure fair value, where the inputs are observable, and that is quoted price in active market for identical or similar. Suppose I have Tata Motors share. So that is listed in stock exchange, well traded in stock exchange. That will be classified as level 1. Right. So anyone who has Tata Motors share will value the Tata Motors share in its books at the same price. There are some exceptions, but that are exceptional. Level 2, input used to measure fair value again are observable, but here, suppose, let's take an example. We have a Coke and Pepsi. So Coke is a listed company, suppose, just for sake of example, and Pepsi is not listed, and they have the equal market, they are into equal, they have same or more or less same segment. So I may take the price of the Coke as my basis and make some adjustment to arrive at the fair value of Pepsi. That will be classified as level 2. Also, in case suppose I have a stock which is although listed but not actively traded in market, there are very few transactions, so that will be classified as level 2. So indirectly observable input, suppose I am using yield curve, implied volatility, credit spread. So if this is the basis, these are market observable, right? This is the basis, then I can classify my investment or my asset or liability as level 2. Level 3, where inputs are used to measure fair value, are unobservable, where I am using my own internal method, approach, and assumption to arrive at the fair value. For example, future expected cash flow. So I am discounting the cash flow using the weighted average cost of capital to arrive at the fair value. So no one outside my organization knows how I have projected the future cash flows. So some other might be projecting it differently. So these are my internal models. There are several other models I'll talk about in my next slides. So now comes the valuation approach. How to value? So there are only 3 approach across world in IFRS, whether it is IFRS, US GAAP, or Ind AS. Only 3, and there will be no other approach. The methods used under these approaches may be endless. You can also develop your own method based upon your assumptions. Most commonly used approach are market approach and income approach. So market approach, there are broadly 3 methods. Income approach, we use discounted cash flow, income capitalization, and cost approach. Let's talk about one by one. Market approach. So market approach uses the market price, right? Market transaction, identical, whether identical or comparable, basis the quoted price in the stock exchange. In case the asset has fewer market comparable, we can use we may consider using the other valuation approach. We may go to income approach. So my securities, my stock is not listed, so I may go to the other approach to arrive at my fair value. So method, commonly used method under this approach is market price method, that is directly listed stock price. Weighted average or volume weighted average, we may take suppose there is a volatility in market. So what I can do, I can take the hourly weighted average for a particular day. On 31st, market has gone up many times. So I may take the or may take the volume weighted average. That is volume multiplied by the price of that on hourly basis to arrive at the price on a particular day. Another method is guideline company or comparable company method. That is, again, we have taken the example of Coke and Pepsi. So that is, we can compare our company with some listed peers with the same volume or same size, right? Same business segment, same industry. Comparable transaction method, multiple method is when my company is unlisted and I do not find any company which is more or less same as my company, I may take the EBITDA multiple or PE multiple of some other company to arrive. So comparable transaction I can take. So what is the EBITDA multiple for the particular industry? I am in automobile. So what is the EBITDA multiple for automobile? I'll take that multiple and make some adjustment to arrive at the fair value of my company. Income approach is DCF. Clearly, we know discounted cash flow. We, as a chartered accountant, we might be using. So discounted, we project the future benefits and future cash flows, and using a discount rate, which generally is the weighted average cost of capital, and we arrive at the discount the cash flow and to arrive at the fair value. Income capitalization for a particular period, we take the revenue and we divide with the capitalization to arrive at the fair value. This is for intangible asset. There are several methods, so such as relief from royalty with or without method, multi-period access. So these are basically for valuing intangible assets. I may not be going into detail. Then for derivative valuation, also for option pricing, there are binomial method and Black-Scholes. There are n number of methods. So company may develop its own method to arrive at valuation. Then comes the cost approach. So cost approach is reproduction cost. There are two methods: reproduction cost or replacement cost. Cost approach is primarily what would be my cost to have the same asset, right? Whether by way of reproduction or replacement. What will I cost to make a replica of my asset in-house? That is reproduction. What I would have to pay to recreate my asset, that is replacement cost, right? These are generally used for internally generated intangible. So that is least commonly used approach. In case you are not able to use market approach, you are not able to use income approach, then you have to come to cost approach. Suppose in case of a pharma company, I am developing some drug. So I may not, and that is new, I cannot compare. So I cannot use that market approach because that is not available outside. And I cannot use, I do not know the future economic benefits and future cash flow. So I would have to use the cost approach, what I have incurred on that, to arrive at its fair value. Now comes the fair value disclosure. So before that, I would like to show you how fair value reporting developed, right? So it will be easier, you will appreciate. After that, we will go after this slide to fair value reporting. Historically, if I talk about our balance sheet was like this. If you look at the left hand side, I have investment. I report the value of the investment for current and previous year. So this is how historically we report the particular asset in my books. And there were notes to accounts. In notes to account, I list out the investment, whether in company A, B, and so and so. So this was during subprime, it was very difficult because different company having the investment in the same particular asset were disclosing separately. They were coming up with separate value of investment. So what happened? Regulator said, asked for the fair value hierarchy. This was developed way back in US sometime during subprime crisis. So level 1, 2, and 3 provide us market observable and unobservable input. Then what happened? Companies started showing maximum value in level 3. They come up with the activity of level 3 roll forward. They said, provide us the activity from the opening balance till the closing balance. What have you done in your level 3 investments? So it asked for transfer to OCI, other comprehensive income, earning, sale, purchase, transfer to other level 1 and 2. Again, this was not solving the purpose. So they come up with additional detail for in 2011 in the accounting standard update. They come up with the additional detail for investment. So that asks for valuation technique. Which technique you have used to arrive at the, whether that is income approach, whether that is discounted cash flow, you have used yield curve. What are the unobservable input, underlying input you have used? What are the methods? What is the ranges of input? What in case of discount rate? So what is the range? Suppose you have 100 assets. So what is the range of discount rate? And provide us the weighted average. Then comes sensitivity analysis, impact on the fair value in case of change. So all these requirements got developed over the time. Coming back to the fair value disclosure. So level of fair value disclosure required depend upon whether the fair value is recurring or non-recurring. So first we need to understand the recurring and non-recurring. What is recurring? Recurring fair value measurement relates to those measurement that is required at each reporting date. For example, available for sale security, derivatives, right? Financial instruments, some of the financial instruments. I have to compulsorily report those investments, assets or liabilities at fair value at reporting date. That is recurring. Non-recurring, which I have to report at on trigger of some event, particular event or transaction. Suppose I have classified my asset as held for sale, my loans as held for sale. I do not have any intention to keep my I am planning to dispose of my particular asset within 1 year. So I'll classify that as held for sale. Then in that case, I will have to report that at fair value. So that is non-recurring, because generally I do not report that debt or loans at fair value. I report that at amortized cost or LOCOM, but my classification has changed, so I have to, that has event has triggered, I have to report that at fair value. Or in case of impairment, suppose my non-financial or non-financial instrument is impaired. Now I have to compulsorily report that at fair value. That Ind AS talks about. So fair value disclosures are, first of all, I have to show the table level 1, 2, and 3 hierarchy, then transfer between level 1 and 2. For level 3, I have to disclose the reconciliation from opening and closing balances. I have to report the valuation techniques I have used and sensitivity analysis, movement, transfer in and out of level 3. And for non-recurring, same, but roll forward is not required. Hierarchy is required. Unobservable inputs detail is required, and additional disclosure that the fair value financial instrument disclosure is required. So this is the table I have made. You can go through that later. I'll share my presentation with you. So in which case recurring, you have to make the recurring, non-recurring, and other cases, right? Let me quickly show you the HSBC. I have financial statement. So practically how fair value is disclosed in the financial statement. This is the fair value measurement extract from the HSBC annual financial statement for 2019. So if you look at, so this is how they have disclosed the fair value hierarchy. Level 1. So this is for non-recurring fair value. Oh, sorry, recurring fair value measurement. So level 1, 2, and 3. Netting would not be there. So that is an exception in difference in US GAAP and IFRS. derivative netting is there in US GAAP. And if you look at the IFRS financial statement, you may not find the netting. So these are the assets, and they have classified level 1, 2, and level 3. And this is how they disclose. And this has to be done with the corresponding period. Then comes for level 3. If I go up and look at, this corporate and other domestic debt securities 510 for level 3. And for previous year, it was level 3, 1803. So it start from 1803 and 510. So I have to disclose the reason why there is a disclose the activity roll forward for level 3, just for level 3. Why not level 1 and 2? Because we are using the market observable input for level 1 and 2. Anyone can assess the fair value. Level 3, we have used our internal models. That is why we have to present the roll forward for this, right? Earnings, transfer to OCI, purchase, sale, issue, settlement, transfer in and out of level. Then comes the additional detail, which says valuation technique. So again, 510 was corporate and other domestic debt securities. So discounted cash flow is the valuation technique I have used. And significant unobservable inputs. What are the unobservable inputs you have used to arrive at the fair value? You have to disclose the ranges and the weight. Here it is not applicable because we have only one asset. We may have only one asset under this category. When you have multiple assets under one category, you would have to give the ranges and the weighted average, right? This is how it is presented in the financial statement. Again, for the corresponding period. And this is sensitivity analysis, and this is non-recurring fair value measurement. So residential mortgage are classified as held for sale. That is why I have to report that as fair value under non-recurring fair value measurements. Impaired or classification as held for sale. Corresponding period, and again for unobservable input for non-recurring level 3 fair value measurements, right? We would have to talk about the valuation techniques and which valuation techniques we have used and all. And for financial instrument, we have to give these are those assets which are not valued at fair value. These are valued at carrying value. So for these assets also, we have to give the carrying value and fair value leveling. Coming back to our slide. So that was all about disclosure. Now let us talk about the COVID-19 impact on fair value measurement. That is the most relevant and hot topic.
Karun, would you like to take up the queries right now or at the end of the session? If there are any queries, I think it's better to take it right now.
Nitish, I have a couple of slides. Maybe you can, as you suggest.
Okay. Then we'll conclude it at the end. Okay. Please continue.
I have a couple of slides, so maybe we can have the queries later. COVID-19 impact on fair value measurement. So COVID-19 may affect the classification in the fair value hierarchy. How? Let me make you understand how it will impact. Like, suppose I have investment in a listed company. Earlier, it was getting transacted in stock exchange. Now, due to COVID, it is not getting transacted. So market participants are not there. I cannot classify that as level 1 because that particular security is not actively traded. I have to move that to level 2. Broker quotes are not available. Earlier they were available. Due to COVID, not available. So earlier I was classifying my investment as level 2. Now quotes are not available. I may not be. I would have to use my internal models to arrive at the fair value. It will go to level 3. So it will shuffle the fair value hierarchy. Company may need to make an adjustment to the observable input also. during February, I remember the Domino's share got increased by 20% suddenly in a day, because Domino has announced the hiring due to COVID. So I may not take that into account. I would have to make some adjustment to arrive at the fair value, because this is extraordinary item. Company may have to replace an observable input with unobservable one, rightly said. Why observable inputs might not be available, or they may not be giving the appropriate value, because market is volatile and securities are going up and down. I may not be able to use, or even if I'm using the observable inputs, I may have to adjust the observable inputs. For investment deemed not active but valued using observable input, additional security may be required. So those investment which were level 2, like we discussed, based upon the broker codes. So broker codes are unstable. We may have to classify. We may have to look for another inputs, another approach or inputs to arrive at the fair value. Company may need to use different input, or source may change, right? I may not be able to foresee my future expected cash flow. So I may not be able to use the discounted cash flow. I may have to use the loss severity rate. So again, depends. Company may need to assess whether the transaction represent orderly or forced. There may be a situation where company might not have sufficient cash flows, so might not have sufficient liquidity. So investors are selling, coming up to dispose of those security. So that may be considered as a forced transaction. So we may not be able to use the, however that is listed, we may not be able to use the observable inputs. Or market transactions are becoming less frequent. Again, we would have to assess. So what would be the challenges we would have to face while making the fair value assessment? So we already discussed that there may be challenge in the cash flow, because companies are not making revenue, and their future is at stake. So maybe uncertain future expected cash flows are there. So we may not be able to assess. Selection of valuation method, which method we should choose, it will become difficult during this situation. Impact on assumption or discount rate. These assumption, discount rate, should I use weighted average cost of capital, or should I adjust weighted average and discount it further? Is it appropriate to use the credit spread? So all these questions will come into mind. Comparable data may not be available. If they are available, may not be appropriate to use. Thinly traded or dormant stock, unusual transaction, that may be the challenge. Earlier, I was able to ascertain the fair value using the observable input. Now my stock is not getting traded, so I may not be able to assess. Difficulty in making adjustment. So marketability has gone. So how do I arrive at the this adjustment discount for lack of marketability? That would be challenge. There are some relief packages, moratorium given by the government. So that may also impact how to take into account those benefits provided by government into my valuation. I have to consider that. So there would be endless challenges while valuing. I'm not sure how companies are going to value their assets. That's all, Nitish, I have. So now I'm ready to answer. Hey, Nitish?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, please share PPT also in chat box.
Yeah, sure. I'll be sharing.
Yeah. So very well deliberated, Karunji. If anyone has any query, just one query I have, Karun, is that you have told that there are no market observable inputs for, like, due to fluctuations in the market, share price of listed and quoted prices of shares have fluctuated up and down.
Nitish, you are not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yes, you are audible.
So as you said that we will not be able to have the observable input. For example, in case of quoted shares, the prices have fluctuated. There have been volatility, and the prices have fluctuated up and down. So how to adjust the same? How to factor in the same?
Right. Right. So we would have, Nitish, we would have observable input, but that since that is volatile, we would have to give additional disclosure whether it is whether we can rely on the market observable data or not, whether we can directly use we can take into account those volatility or not. We may use the weighted average prices, so we may make some kind of adjustment. Like I said in my example, so Domino's price have suddenly gone up because they have announced hiring due to COVID, and they need additional task force to deliver. So there may be circumstances that prices suddenly shot up. We may have to adjust that. We may go with the market observable input along with some adjustment in that case, in such a case. Or we may use the weighted average volume rate. So again, we would have to disclose everything in the financial statement.
Okay, clear. So there is one query in the chat box also. Prashum, can you read the same?
Yes. So Himanshu K, I have some legal entities which do trading from tax havens like Luxembourg, and we have huge cryptocurrencies like Ethereum sitting on my balance sheet. We trade with China and make payment to companies using them. In absence of clear guidance, we we would classify them under cash equivalents and would like to classify them as FI. Can you tell me what would be best fair value approach? I have an observable market as I get day day-to-day quotes. We were earlier classifying them as inventories, but the auditors have now asked us to restate looking at the overall business model.
I could not hear you. Let me just quickly read the question.
Yes,
I
yes.
can see it in chat box. So, Himanshu, uh, earlier you were classifying that as an inventory because you were trading. So this question have come up earlier also, not in context with this cryptocurrency, but stock. The brokers also were having a huge inventory in their account, and earlier they were carrying the their inventories at cost, right? What you have to do, you cannot carry this at this point of time because earlier you were carrying it at cost. At this point of time you cannot because the market price have gone down. So you would have to consider impairment of financial instrument that is governed by IFRS 9, Ind AS 109. So you would have to immediately test for impairment and impair your financial instrument first of all.
Hello.
So that standard talk about the recoverable amount. So you will have to recoverable amount, the future economic benefits, and the fair value, and then make that investment impair.
हिमांशु का एक और क्वेश्चन है करुण.
What they are saying is they are treating them as cash
That is
equivalent.
covered in financial instruments. That are financial instruments.
And one question from Anil Jain. Okay, अभी इनका है. I have some network problem.
So let me read it out. In case of level 3 valuation under DCF model, whether it should be based on as is where is basis, or one can also consider cash flows expected of future expansion
No,
of the company.
it should be on, yeah. Right, right. It should not be. The fair value measurement standard as the premise, highest and the best use. So for all the non-financial assets, it should be highest and the best use.
Karan, the question
As
is
is,
different.
as is,
As is where is basis.
Hello.
as is, where is basis is you are disposing of particular asset during liquidation. So in case you are a going concern and you have adopted this standard, you will have to follow the highest and the best use approach.
Now, my question is with respect to valuation of a company. Like company is running and
Okay.
I am considering cash flow from my normal business. Can I all if I have some future plan for expansion of the company, so can I also consider the revenue arises from the future expansion?
Yes, that is not covered through fair value measurement, FAS 113. So you are talking about the business valuation as a whole. So there may be circumstances you may have to assess the viability of future expected cash flow. There may be a number of circumstances. So you may have to take into account that all those circumstances while arriving at the fair value. So this this particular case, you can refer the Ind AS valuation standard issued by ICAI.
Okay, thank you.
There is a standard business valuation, so which talks about the valuation of a business as a whole. FAS 113 will not apply to business valuation, right? This is particularly for fair value reporting in the financial statement.
There is one more question whether when investment classified under level 3, fair value of such investments can be valued by a management or is it required from a valuer? Valuation report is required from a
Right.
valuer.
Very good question. So in this case for fair value measurement, a company may not require a valuer. Otherwise, for every asset, every company would be going to the valuer. So they can use the internally developed softwares and they can buy the software. There are a number of valuation software. So they can put in the criteria and assess the valuation. However, they would have to disclose the basis of their valuation in their annual report. So there is no such requirement from a registered valuer for fair value reporting.
Another question is from Mr. Satish. I have to issue report for FEMA purpose for transfer of shares from non-resident to resident. Currently, the company is not in the position to give cash flow projection. Currently, I am using EBITDA multiple based on industry EBITDA taken from money control. What would be likely impact of COVID-19 on valuation?
See, there are market approach. This question will not flow into fair value measurement again. So there are three approach that is everywhere prevalent. So you, in case you are not able to use the market approach, you can come to income approach. That you are not able to assess the fair value, the future expected cash flows. So you can use the cost approach. Whatever company have incurred so far, what are their assets? You can value those individually assets and arrive at the fair value. In this case, in case future expected cash flows are uncertain, you should not take into account EBITDA multiple.
And the next question is how to make fair value assessment of building and plant and machinery.
So that is again, you can use the income approach. considering whether you are able to let the building out, what is the highest and best use of that building. Even if you have kept your building idle, then also you can take into account the future rental incomes from that building and discount that using a discount rate to arrive at the fair value. You can also use the market approach, and you can have the quotes from the brokers outside to assess whether the same building, similar size or similar floors is available at what in vicinity, at what price that is available, and you can make some kind of adjustment into that valuation basis your obsolescence, your life of your building and all. So you can, in this case, you can use market approach as well as you can use income approach. You can also use, in if both the approach are not viable, so you can also use the cost approach. How much it will cost me to build that building? How much it will cost if I ask some builder to make the building, adjusted by the depreciation? So you can arrive, you can, in this case, you can use all the three methods.
So what will be the value of shares delisted during the mid of the year?
So it does not matter when it is FAS 113 talks about the fair value at the time of reporting on 31st of March. What is the status? So even though the share is listed during the year, you cannot take into account that thing. So as of today, what is the situation? If it is not listed, so you cannot use the market approach. You would have to use the income approach or cost approach to arrive at the fair value.
With IFRS 16 creating right to use asset on the asset side of the balance sheet for lessor, should we use the same fair valuation approach as we do for similar kind of asset for the lessee?
No, IFRS 16 is specific IFRS and has the overriding impact. This is general standard. This 113 is general. So leases is specific, so that will have separate treatment as per IFRS 16. You cannot club both of them together. This is standard. Wherever other standard talks about fair valuation, you have to come to this standard. For a separate standard, IFRS 16, you have to follow that standard.
Thanks. If anyone has any other query, please. Or if anyone wants to add any value to what we have discussed over the last one hour, she is most welcome.
I have certain observations. Can I?
Yes, sir.
It was a very good presentation. Straight away, very well appreciated. You see, a couple of observations I can make. One is that under the Indian context, prior to these value and valuation rules under the Companies Act, when it was coming in, broadly you could divide two kinds of valuation. Broadly, I'm talking broadly. One is where the foreign investors were coming in and they were trying to get the valuations done. All of them, broadly, again, I'm saying, were preferring international valuation standards. Otherwise, leaving that aside, the second segment was which were all the valuers were supposed to get registered under the Income Tax Act 34 AB, and they were performing their valuations whatever their clients wanted, whatever the client's requirement was. Even the municipal corporations were having their own way, bankers were having their own way. So these two broad categories were there. And the third small change is that I have little bit a different opinion from my friend. Because if you look at the regulation 111, possibly of both the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, you will find valuation as one of their subjects. So it's not something where hundreds and thousands of chartered accountants and cost accountants and other professionals, they were already doing valuation. So one of the remarks saying, and I know this remark is also coming from IBBI, that valuation a profession in India is at very nascent stage. I think this is not correct. I totally disagree with that. We were doing valuations from donkeys here. Only thing what was required was it was not in a properly regulated way and under a single umbrella. Because financial valuations were always being done by these two professional bodies, whereas the technical valuation, there was already an institution, IOV, Institution of Valuers. And in today's context, when the government thought about bringing this regulation under the Companies Act, the whole concept was that anything coming under, there are number of sections which are already given where the word valuation is coming under the Companies Act. They should have brought the requirement under those sections also to get it valued from a registered valuer. Till date, they have not yet clarified. So they are creating, this is creating a much bigger confusion. The one more observation what the speaker said was that, yes, he's right, Institute of Chartered Accountants, those valuation standards are valid only for the chartered accountants and not on anyone else, which again is a very bad part, because again, as a financial, and it is applies only to financial assets, because they are not experts on assets and plant and machinery and land and building. And very interestingly, because in one of the meetings where I was part of that IBBI meeting where this presentation was made of fair market valuation, my one word that tell me in which country, which international standards the word fair market or the fair is there. And on that date itself is what decided that, okay, this will be applying only to the members of the Chartered Accountants Institute and government will develop its own standard. Now, very interesting part all of us will understand is, as of now, if you go to the valuation rules, every valuer, every registered valuer has to look at three things, three type of standards. One, which is very clearly there, either you have to follow international valuation standards, and you have to follow whatever has been prescribed by your respective um, uh, organization, or the whatever prescribed by the government. And very interestingly, what is the status of all these three? International valuation standards have been accepted in India only by one organization, and that is IOV, right? Where it was adopted on my second meeting when I was the chairman of the Valuation Standards Board of the IOV. Till now, no other institute has adopted IVSC standard. Of course, in costing, I'll be doing it if I get a chance. The second part is, respective, no other institution other than the Institute of Chartered Accountants have come out with the valuation standard. And of course, it is there always for reference and a guide, whatever you want to do. Definitely, it is helping a lot to all the valuers. The third is central government, after this rule, 3 years struggling, absolutely they have not come out with any guidance, any standard, nothing they have done. They have totally, or rather miserably failed. And now what they are trying to do is, they want to create a super regulator, national, whatever the nomenclature they want to give. And then they want to come out with the standard which they may prescribe, which is again a very stupid idea, because when already international valuation standards proven across the world, almost majority of the world, when international valuation standards are there and it is already on record, how can you come out of that scenario and have a standalone standard? I think where the hitch is that they don't want to pay, just like they paid a huge money for IFRS, they are little bit hesitant and they want to do their own this thing. Irrespective of this, as of now, definitely valuation is a very challenging profession and very nicely enumerated. But I just wanted to have this couple of observations, because fortunately and unfortunately, few hearsays I also hear, and I think it's a very interesting, very challenging, and in near future, it's a golden route for all the professionals if they can follow, because a lot of things are waiting to happen. So thank you so much for. I just wanted to these observations, whatever I know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Aniket ji, formal vote of thanks करिए.
Thank you, everyone. It was a very nice and illuminating presentation. And Karun ji, really nice presentation. We learned a lot. And I will say to everybody, this is last opportunity. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And even if you have some doubts later, you can share those doubts with myself or Nitish. We will get it clarified and give you the Karunji's response. And time has come to say goodbye to you all. Thank you, Nitish ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for patient listening. Stay safe, stay home, and
Thank
stay
you
safe.
all
Thank you.
for participating.
Thank you, team EVCC. Thank you to all.
Thank you, sir.